So far, we determined that our target is vulnerable to attacks. Now it's time to actually attack it by trying to exploit the discovered vulnerabilities. This is the most exciting phase for an attacker. The main goal is to obtain access to the target system and then further penetrate the network that our target is part of. The main tool used in this section is Metasploit. This is a very powerful tool that is part of Kali Linux and allows a hacker or pentester to fully exploit a system by using only this tool. We have a lot to discuss, so let's dive in. So far we discussed about two vulnerability scanners that can help us determine if our target is vulnerable to attacks: OpenVAS and Nessus. In this video, we will take a step further and try to exploit the system based on the information gathered in the previous steps. There are plenty of vulnerabilities discovered by both scanners, some of them with higher or even critical severity, meaning that our target might be vulnerable to our attacks. We don't know this for sure, but we are going to find out in this video. There are multiple paths that we can follow when trying to attack our target. We can see that one of these services, the VNC server, is using a password of password. This means that we don't need anything else in order to connect to that service. But for other services, we might need an exploit. An exploit is a piece of code that runs against a vulnerability and tries to, well, exploit it, of course. The result usually is a remote shell that we will be able to use to further examine the system. Let's try exploiting one of these services, and for that, let me switch back to Nmap that I used with the SV option to determine the services running on our target. Let's try exploiting the first service, vsftpd, an FTP server. By copying the service name and its version and simply performing a Google search for these terms, we were able to obtain more information about it. The first link on the results page is one from the Rapid7 website, the creators of Metasploit, the application that we will be using in this video. Here we can find more information about this vulnerability. The vulnerability is actually a backdoor, a code that a developer of vsftpd introduced into the source code of the application. That would have given him access to any system that runs this specific version of the server. The code was detected and removed from the source code, but the damage has been done, meaning that anyone that installed that version of the application is vulnerable. To exploit the system, we will use a powerful tool that's part of the Kali Linux, Metasploit. Metasploit, or better known as the Metasploit framework, is a tool for developing and executing exploit code against a remote target machine. In other words, Metasploit not only gives you the possibility to exploit a system, it lets you create new exploits that you can use against newly discovered vulnerabilities. Of course, you have to be a developer in order to create these exploits. In this video, we will use Metasploit to exploit the vsftpd vulnerability found in our target machine. To run the application, we will use msfconsole command, which will display the Metasploit console. The first run might take a while, so you will have to be patient. As soon as the application is launched, we can see the number of exploits contained in the database along with the number of payloads. We will discuss about each one later in this course. One of the first things to try on Metasploit is the help command, which will display more information about the main functionality of the application. There are a lot of commands that you can use with Metasploit, but everything will probably make more sense after our first example. For instance, we can see that there is a search command that will allow us to search for the module name and descriptions. This looks interesting. Let's use it to search for the vulnerability that we are interested in. So I will get back to the console and type search, followed by the name of our vulnerability, which is vsftpd v2.3.4. In case you want to search for a more generic one, you can simply skip the version number and see if there are other vulnerabilities found in this FTP server. After a few seconds, we were able to find a vulnerability that we were looking for. It appears that this is the only vulnerability related to the vsftpd server found in the Metasploit database. We can find more information about this specific vulnerability, like the date that it was made public and the rank, which is excellent in this case. A higher rank means that the chances of successfully attacking a system by using this exploit are also higher. In this case, excellent means that the rate of success for this exploit is, well, excellent, which is great. So far so good, we found what we're looking for, but how can we use this in order to attack our target system? The keyword here is use, because that is exactly what we are going to type in the command line in order to be able to use this exploit. First, we need to copy the exploit name along with its path, which can also be found in the Rapid7 website. So we can copy either from here or directly from the Metasploit console and then type the use keyword followed by the copied text. You can also type the path for the exploit and use the tab key for auto-completion, but will always be easier to just paste the copied text. As soon as we press enter, we can see the cursor changing into our exploit name in red. This means that we are using this exploit or module at the current time. You can switch to any other module at any time. Next, I will use the help command again to get more information related to the next step. We can see that we can use the check command in order to determine if a target is really vulnerable. We can use the exploit or run command to actually use the exploit along with other commands. Another very useful command that we can use in this phase is show options. This will actually display the options that are related to the selected module, in our case the vsftpd exploit module. There are a few options that can be used with this particular module, and we can see that one of these, host, is not set. This option has a required attribute set to yes, meaning that we need to set this option before being able to proceed further with this module. We can also see a short description of this attribute, which represents the target's IP address, in our case the Metasploitable's IP address. The other attribute is port, which is the target port number. We can see that this is currently set to 21 and was also required. So in case this attribute had no value, we will need to provide this information before being able to continue. Now, in order to provide the remote host IP address, we will use the set command, followed by the name of the attribute that we want to set, in our case host, and then the value that we want to assign to this attribute. In our case, we want our host attribute to take the value of the IP address that's allocated to our target machine, which is 192.168.100. I hope that you remember this IP address by now. As soon as we provide this information, we can see that this has been successfully assigned to the host field or attribute. We can again type show options, just to verify the information that we provided, and it looks good. Looks like all the required information is available. Let's type help again, and that will display more information related to the current stage. At this time, in order to use the exploit, we can either type run or exploit, run being an alias for the exploit command. So I will type run, and we should see if the exploit is successful or not. There is no guarantee that an exploit will succeed. There are many factors that will contribute to the success or failure of an exploitation. In this particular case, the exploit was successful, and a new command shell session has been opened for us. We can also see that the UID or user ID associated with this shell is 0, meaning that we have root access. We can also see the connection between our current machine, the Kali Linux machine, and the target system. Next, let's try to determine who we are in the target system. By typing who am I, we can see that we have indeed access to the target as a root account, meaning that we have full authority. But how do we know that we are indeed connected to our target system and this is not our Kali Linux machine? Well, it's easy to find out. Just type ifconfig and the network configuration utility will display the IP address of the system we are currently using. We can see that the IP address is 192.168.1.100, the one that has been allocated to our Metasploitable machine. So we are indeed connected to the target system and using the root account. Being able to obtain root access on a target system represents the most exciting moment for an attacker. The next step will be to try to crack the passwords for the local users, so the next time he will be able to log in using one of these current accounts. This time the exploit has worked great for us, but sometimes you might have problems executing the exploit, or the result of it might not be the one that we expect. So having another way into the system is always recommended. Also, if there are any intrusion detection systems in place on the target machine, this might detect our activity while we try to execute our exploit, but this usually don't get triggered by any normal user login activity. So this is another benefit of gaining access to an user account on that system. In order to be able to see the users and password stored in the system, we can take a look at the passwd file located in the etc folder. Here we can find a list of the usernames, but for the passwords we can see only an X, meaning that the passwords are stored in the hash format in another file. And this file is called shadow, also stored in the etc folder. So by typing cat/etc/shadow, we get access to the shadow file containing the users along with the hashed passwords. We will see how to crack these passwords in the next video, but for now let's close this shell connection, and we can do that by using the Ctrl+C keyboard shortcut. The connection was closed and we are back in the Metasploit framework. In this video, we use the Metasploit framework to exploit one of the vulnerabilities found in our target system. We saw that Metasploit provides a great collection of exploits, and a developer can even extend this collection by creating new ones. By searching for a possible vulnerability, we were able to find an exploit that was used to get access to the remote system, and not any type of access, but one with root or administrative privileges. Then we took a look at the users and their passwords that are part of this machine